Hi everyone, my name's Ruby. I'll be sharing my testimony and how I became a Christian. A little bit about myself. I was raised Catholic and would go to church every other Sunday, but I didn't really have a relationship with God. Um, I would say I had a really good childhood until my parents got divorced when I was 9 or 10 years old. That was really heartbreaking for me. And after that came middle school, and I had my first crush and boyfriend in seventh grade. um, I found myself almost like addicted to having a boyfriend. For me, it wasn't the butterflies, but it was the feeling of being secure and feeling loved and less alone. Just like the feeling of having someone. And I just kept on having boyfriend after boyfriend, even though the relationships would last a week or two. It didn't matter. I just went on to the next one. Then came eighth grade. I was first introduced to partying, mostly because I hung out with older people my age, and they would take me to house parties with them. And then during that, I got introduced to drinking, and I started drinking at age 13. Um, and I was also around other stuff, if you know what I'm talking about. Um, then came high school, my freshman year, and sophomore year. I continued to go to house parties like every weekend. Um, and then I was also introduced to homosexuality, so I kind of experimented with that. And I I always had an open mind to a lot of things. And now that I think about it, I really was a follower. I always try to fit in, and I think that's why I was open to everyone and anything, because I just wanted to belong. And um, deep inside, I just never was satisfied with everything I tried and the people that I hung out with. I just never felt like I belonged. I don't know how else to describe it, but um, I also would go to raves all the time, and again, hanging out with older people my age. And I was just around a lot of stuff that people my age shouldn't be around. Um, After that, I was in a serious relationship at 16, and I also had gotten my first job at the time as a hostess at a restaurant. And um, going back to this relationship, things pretty much got rocky. I loved the guy so much, and I was obviously serious about the relationship. Um, but he had to leave uh, for a few months because he joined the military, and he ended up coming back. But when he came back, I found out that he had been lying to me and talking to other girls, and he was even cheating on me with a girl from work, and that completely broke my heart. I was just devastated, and at the same time I couldn't let go of him. At the same time, it didn't even cross my mind to break up with him, because I just was never used to being single. I always had a boyfriend since seventh grade, and so I tried everything in my power to keep this relationship. I would go to people for advice, and I would even read books on relationships, but nothing seemed to work. Things just would get worse. And so going back to my job, I experienced a panic attack for the first time. One of those days I was at work, a customer had walked in and he triggered a traumatic experience that I went through during middle school, a medical experience. And for those of you who have never had a panic attack, it is so scary. I remember I was shaking and my hands were sweating, my heart was racing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt lightheaded. I almost felt like I was gonna pass out. It was just an ugly experience. And I think I went home early that day. But the weeks after that, I felt paralyzed. I couldn't focus anymore. I just felt a lot of fear and I felt overwhelmed. I felt restless. And on top of that, I was going through a hard time with my relationship. And so I would come home from work in the middle of the day, like at 2 p.m., and I would go straight to my room and force myself to sleep because I just wanted rest. It literally physically felt like someone was like holding my head and squeezing it so hard because I don't know, I just felt very stressed out and I was going through a lot mentally and emotionally. And my mom noticed, and so she goes and up the up to my room and she talks to me, and I kind of open up to her and I tell her what I'm experiencing and what I'm the thoughts that I'm having. And we kind of both start crying because of that traumatic experience that my family and I went through during that time. So it was hard on all of us. And but she ended up giving me like a booklet of prayers, of Catholic prayers, and in the front of it was like the Virgin Mary, and I believed in all of that stuff that the Catholic Church would practice, and I was familiar with some of the prayers, and so of course I received it, and I would pray the prayers on the booklet um, every day. But I continued to feel restless. I didn't feel peace. My relationship was getting worse. I ended up leaving the job because I couldn't focus anymore. On top of that, I was also trying to finish high school, and um, so yeah, it was just very overwhelming for me. And fast forward to 17 years old, I'm still with the guy, and at the time, like towards the end of that relationship, my family really did not like him because they saw how much he would put me through and how much he hurt me. So every time he would come pick me up, we would have to go somewhere else, like to the park or to the parking lot outside a store just to hang out. And we were in an argument that day that we saw each other, and we went to the park, and it was the middle of the day, and I was just very overwhelmed by everything. Even though I was only 17, I felt like I had lived so much, and I felt like I had hit rock bottom. And I really did live a pretty fast life because, again, I was always around older people my age, and I was doing things that kids shouldn't be doing. But so yeah, we were fighting, we were arguing in his car, and I was just so done with everything. I didn't have the energy anymore to speak or to fight or to do anything. I was just done. And I walked out of his car, and as I'm walking away, I say out loud, "God, where are you?" And I go and sit down on a bench, and shortly after, he catches up to me and we kind of continue to talk. And then, less than 10 minutes after I said, God, where are you? A couple comes up to us and they ask if they can speak to us, and we agree. And they start talking about God. And I was just like blown away because I was just like, wow, like I just asked for God, like this is crazy. And they start talking about God and about Jesus. And then the girl asked me if we can step aside and talk alone. So I agree, and we step aside, and she tells me, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here to tell you that God loves you and He wants to heal your heart. And when she said that, I wanted to cry so much, and I wanted to hold her and hug her, because just like, wow, like she didn't, if she knew that I had just asked for God and God showed up, and those words brought so much hope, and I just couldn't believe it. I was kind of like shocked. I was just like blown away. And she continues to talk about God and about Jesus and what He did for us. And then she invites me to her church. And I remember I asked her if it was a Catholic church, because I said, because I'm Catholic. um, and I didn't want to go to a church that wasn't Catholic. But she tells me, no, we're a non-denominational church. What that means is that we just study the Bible, and anyone is welcome. Anyone can come in. Any religion can step inside the church. And she gave me her number, and I went home that day, and I was just kind of like still blown away, thinking about what had happened. And about 2 weeks went by, and during those 2 weeks I hadn't talked to her, but I couldn't let go of that experience. I was constantly replaying it in my head, what she said to me that night at the park. And I was like, I need to go to this church. I want to see what it's all about. I mean, I want to hear more. I want to see what this is about. And my boyfriend and I decided to check it out. It was a Wednesday night service. We get there, and I walk into the church, and I was completely shocked because I was confused. I was like, is this like a rave? Like, where am I? Because it was so different than the Catholic church. There were colorful lights, there was music playing, everyone was dancing and singing, and it was just a different atmosphere. I wasn't used to it. I had never stepped inside another church other than like Catholic churches. And so I go and I join the crowd, and as I'm standing there next to my boyfriend, I notice that the people around me are speaking in tongues, and I low-key was freaking out because I had never heard of that. I just was like, what are they saying? Like, this is crazy. They sound crazy. And fear came in. Immediate fear came in, and I was even having thoughts like, is this demonic? And I started to shake. I wasn't having like a panic attack, but I was shaking and my hands were sweating. And I remember holding my boyfriend's hand because I was just so scared. I was like confused. And the girl that had talked to me at the park comes to me, and she says hi, and she asks if she can pray for me. And so she starts praying for me in tongues, and I'm like here freaking out. I seriously thought about pushing her away, and leaving the church because I was truly scared. And but as she's praying in tongues, then she goes on and tells me in English, she tells me, God is showing me that the reason why you've been looking for love in men is because your father left you. Oh my goodness. When she said that, I started sobbing. And that fear that I was feeling completely left. It literally felt like something physical left my body. That heaviness, that burden, I felt it lifting away from my shoulders. And I was crying and I was like, what? Like, how do you know this? And she goes on and tells me, but God is a father you've always wanted. You're his princess and he loves you. Man, I literally got the chills. But when she said that and when I heard that, again, the fear left and I felt an overwhelming presence, something that I've never felt before in my entire life. I felt so much peace. I felt like God came and hugged me and held me, and I felt secure for the first time. I felt protected. And I remember I'm like, what else is he telling you? Like, but she was praying for me, and I mean, I hadn't talked to her for those 2 weeks after I met her at the park. So she didn't know anything about my past. She didn't know anything about my parents divorcing. Only God knew that. And so when she told me that, I was just overwhelmed. And I ended up staying for the service, and I ended up giving my life to Christ that day. And after that, shortly after that, maybe, I don't remember if it was like weeks or months after, but I let go of that relationship. It was hard, but man, it was so worth it because I started going to this church every week. I started learning more about God and about having a relationship with him. God started revealing so much to me. He started showing me why I was doing the things that I was doing. He started showing me what I was looking for, and not just showing me, but giving me all the things that I had been longing for. He was giving me that security, that love, that satisfaction. And it's crazy because when I look back, not realizing that I was a follower, but when I look back, I really was a follower, always trying to fit in. But deep inside, even though I didn't have a relationship with God at the time, I just felt like I never fit in with the world because God had a different plan for my life. I was meant to be a follower of Christ. And it's just so crazy too, because I remember one of the times after a house party, my friends and I were thinking about either going home or looking for another party. And I remember I was just like bored that night, and I was just like wanting to go home, and I would mock God. I remember I said, so my friends wanted to go to another party, and I said like, no, I have to go home, let's go home. I have church study tomorrow. And like, that was so hilarious to me, and like I would laugh, like it's not even funny, but I would laugh, and like literally here I am going to church study every week. It's just crazy that I was meant to be a follower of Christ. And I thank God I never fit in with any of the groups that I was in. I never fit in with homosexuality. I didn't fit in with the drugs or with the rave lifestyle. I fit in with God. I fit in with Christ. And it was so beautiful how the more I learned about him, the more I wanted him and the more I became to change as well. It didn't happen from one day to the other, but the way I can explain it is the things, taste and see that the Lord is good. And man, he is so good, because again, the more I would experience his love and his kindness, how gentle he is, how loving and forgiving he is, I couldn't go back to my old habits. I couldn't go back to my old self, because none of those things were even fun to me anymore. None of those things were satisfying at all. And so that's how I became a Christian. That's how I gave my life to Christ and how I was saved. That was 10 years ago. And here I am, still growing, still learning. I'm now married, and man, God is so good. And if you're looking for a sign, this is your sign that God is real, God is here, God wants you, God loves you, he's calling you, and all you have to do is run to him and he will give you rest. Because wow, the rest that I was looking for during that time, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't find it in other religions. I couldn't find it in friends or in parties and distractions. I found it in God. He was the only one that satisfied me, that filled me up, that gave me a love that didn't fail, that doesn't fail. A love that is so good and pure, that doesn't lie, that doesn't cheat. I can't stress it enough. Like, wow. It's amazing saying it out loud, sharing my testimony. I feel butterflies. I go back to that day, and I literally called out to him out loud during that, after that argument at the park. I was desperate, and I was tired, I was weary, and God heard my cry and God showed up. And I know that it's been 10 years since then, and I'm not gonna say that life has been easy since. It definitely has not. There's been many times that I've tried to leave my faith, because times do get hard. As a Christian, your life doesn't get better. It just, instead of doing life alone, you're doing it with God. So yes, I've struggled and I've tried to run away from God, but I can't. I can't taste and see that the Lord is good, and you will not go back to your old ways, because God is better, God is greater, and the enemy is a liar. The enemy is such a liar. The Bible calls him the father of lies, and he is no good. He will not bring you any good. He uses things to distract us, but he's not someone that will satisfy you. He'll distract you for a while, but no, God is the God that satisfies you. And so I'm not sure where this channel will be going, but I do know that I would love to share more of my stories and more of what God has done in my life, in hopes of bringing hope to people and sharing the love of God, and just sharing my story. Again, I'm not perfect, and I'm doing life with God, and if you want to follow this channel and follow my journey, go ahead and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for listening to my story and this testimony. I hope and pray that it blesses you and that it speaks to you, and that you guys open up to him and seek him with all your heart. And I think that's the end of the video. Thank you again, and I hope you have a nice day or good night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.